One of the clients I have for video production is Sound on Sound magazine, and when we were covering the AES show in New York, we shot with Illmind. We did something a little different. I recorded an acapella vocal, which I wrote in just under an hour and recorded using an SE handheld dynamic mic with my head surrounded by pillows in a hotel room, so it was quite improvised, singing along just to a single root note, sort of improvising a melody. We then took this to Illmind and he created a track out of it, which was pretty amazing to watch, and you should check it out. At the end of the production, I just asked if I could have the multi-track, and now I've decided to do a mix with it so I can show you how I work, which is a sort of combination of hardware and software using Presonus Studio One Professional. Briefly, what's going on here? That's a mic that's picking up my voice now. That's a Roswell Mini K47. It's an inexpensive but nice mic. Other things you'll see me using, that's a Sennheiser coffee mug, obviously. This is a Huion tablet. It's like a sort of Wacom style drawing tablet. I use this because it prevents RSI. I've also got an upright mouse that, actually that's probably not going to peek into shot, but that's another RSI thing. I'll go into RSI relief at some other point on another vlog. This is another RSI tool. This is literally called Knob. It is just a massive knob, and if you see me doing that, I can scroll up and down. I can switch it to scroll left and right. In the background there, we've got my main hardware rack. It's overspilling gradually into another one that's over there, which is where the patch bays are. I'm not going to film the patch bay, but I am filming the hardware rack down there with a GoPro, so I will cut to that occasionally just so you can see what's going on. The other place you'll see my hand go quite a lot is a monitor controller down here, which is a Drummer CMC2. Other than that, I've got a couple of other bits knocking around here, lots of grot boxes because I like those. So there's a Pure Radio Evoke 2 XT. Thank you, Chenzo Townsend. Everyone uses them because of him. I've got some IK Multimedia iLouds, which are on the outside of my main Kef R3s. There is Amazon Soundbar. Yeah. Cheap as chips, but it's how people listen to music, so it's a really good reference for how massive bass is going to come across on something that's realistic. The first thing I did was group up everything into the groups of tracks that make sense. So these are all coloured blue. These are the drums. That is the bass. These are all the keys, and these pink ones down here are the vocals. And everything is being given its own bus output. So all of these drums go out through drum bus, and so on. All of this then runs to the master, and the master has a little pipeline insert there called vlog out, which has no return. That's going through RME's loopback on the driver, just so I can capture everything for you to hear without Sonarworks on, because my main out has got Sonarworks on all the time, and I wouldn't live without it now. Drum-wise, that's the first thing I did, and I kind of find it the most important. I did the relationship between the kick and the bass at first, but the kick, I've just added some untuned sub with R bass. This hat here, without the EQ on, does get on your ears a bit. Kind of leaned it up a little bit. Again, I do a lot of this. This is called, I call it just fighting the curve. So I just sort of see the curve of the instrument and press down on the bit that's pushing too hard. These little ticks, again, fighting the curve on it, but also using Soothe to press down on that excess harmonic, because it's just quite harsh otherwise. Again, I'm sort of fighting the curve again here with this offbeat hat. Also, it's high pass filter because you just don't need any low information that might have snuck into that. This white noise clap, I added a delay to using Reels. It's a wet only delay. So on the effects here, it's on a split. So I've got a wet only delay and the dry track just as is. Come on, thank you. And it's just because when I was grooving along to it, I was wanting to hear it go. So that's what I've done. These hats I hadn't done yet, so I'll stick one in there now. tiny bit out there, I think. Oh God, no. Snare's a little bit more complicated. So snare without anything on. Powerful, but it gets on your ears. So the first thing I put in was this API EQ. I didn't do the treble at first, but I did these low, mid, and sort of high bass, as it were, just to make it a bit more woody and knocky. The treble boost is to counteract using this cassette, Waves Factory cassette, just to take a bit of the edge off. So without, it's got a hard edge. With the essence of it is still there, but it's not so harsh. And then I did add on a soothe. That was just, again, to just press down a little bit on those harmonics that can get on your ears, especially when you crank things. And at the moment I've got things pretty loud, which I shouldn't do for too long, obviously. All of that is run into a drum bus, and the drum bus is running through TG12413 Xena limiter, which is just an amazing piece of kit. That one isn't exactly like the Chandler one. That's more based on the original Abbey Road circuits. The Chandler one's a bit different as far as I know, but it has got the new old stock Xena diodes thingamajigger in it. And it's not fully wet mixed because I kind of want it to keep some of its original punch. Also note, I have my model customized with a very high pass. I'm really into very high passes. So 400 Hertz is missing off the very low bass, quite a lot of the sort of mid bass. Kick and bass, I sidechained the bass. Just to let the massive kick push down on the bass like that. Bass has a lot on it because as it wasn't that bassy. Low air. It's a solid plugin. It's designed for post-production 5.1 stuff and adding sort of, you know, subsonic harmonics, but I like it on music. That's the compressor that's sidechaining it. Soothe is doing something very interesting here, and this is one of my favourite ways to use it. It's levelling out the sort of harmonics of each different note. So often when you have a bass synth or a bass guitar, a certain note will boom and bloom in an odd way. You'll be like, oh, that's twice as loud. It shouldn't be like that. One of the really easy ways to nowadays to get rid of that effect is to use Soothe too. There's lots more sub without it, but it's not even. Some of the notes are massive and some of them are small. But I still wanted it smoother, so I banged it through Pipeline and set it up with the Drama 1968, which is just good at clamping things. If you watch the Drama, you'll see that on the lowest note of this phrase, the compressor, the needles here, press down really hard on the lowest note, and that's because the lowest note is very, very resonant. So let's just quickly have a look at that. You may as well hear it without it. Now, what I've got on here all the time at the moment, which I don't usually put on, and I didn't in fact put on until about an hour in, until I'd got through almost all of my main parts, was tape, Softube tape, which is a really good tape emulator. Here it's on what's called a MixFX, and in Studio One that means it's coming on every track, but it's allowing certain tracks to pass, normal tracks to pass through. For some reason, it wasn't picking up the bass track or the bass bus alone, so I put another copy of it on there and just adjusted it with its own settings. But that's a really good effect, and it really does smooth things off nicely, so do consider getting it. When it comes to the keyboards, it's just some EQ at the moment. Just enhancing a little bit the sound of what that one already is. This one's quite a bit more extreme. Without it, it's a more normal Rhodes. With it, it's sort of heavily enhanced in the ranges that the other synth isn't, just to help them cut past each other. So all the synths are running through some hardware too. They're all bussed out through the llmind SC2.2, which is just a really good optical compressor for like tinkly melodies, leads, guitars, that kind of thing. So without it, with just ties it all together a little bit. You can see it pushing down on the needle there.
One time breaking up and getting don't stop. Shall we carry on pushing till we both drop? We came through all the tough times. Hold on through another year's rough ride. You keep it pinned to the floor through the cold night.
I was just swapping between mono and stereo there, and I think it sort of sounds much more punchy in mono, but I don't want it in mono, so I'm going to find a mid-side just to push the mid up a little bit and drop the sides back. That's a small GUI, so I'm going to have to lean in. There we go. I remembered it at last. So I've just switched this to MS.
We were never gonna make it through the red light.
So all the way mid, all the way side, and I'm just having it, somewhere there.
We were never gonna make it through the red light.
Same with that lead, it's on its own. The ooh-oh-oh-ohs are really wide, so I'm pulling that lead back to the middle because it's just too far on the outsides. So it is fighting that lead with the vocal in this end bit. I'm just going to sidechain it off so that only when it's picking up from this lead vocal, I don't want the vocal bus, actually I want it in the lead vocal, that it gets pressed down. Synth 2, compress it down. Get lost in that. I always get lost in that menu. It's not going to sound transparent at all. I don't really want it to. I just want it to be pressed down by that vocal. So let's see what happens. There's that vocal, the kind of mushy one. The one that's pitched down. I purposely smashed it with just the Arturia comp and then hit it into reels to take all that off. It's quite full range. I don't really want it full range. Doesn't need any treble, just needs to push in the middle. It has a delay on as well. I'm actually going to equalize it a little bit. Usuals. Don't really want it running any sub at all, to be honest. And I do want it to push quite hard on the middle, so I don't have to have it too loud, but it still cuts through. So I added, on this backing vocal, I added a Dolby Type A emulation. I've got a real one over there, but it's not plumbed in at the moment. So, you know, that's how it works. And if you're working on stuff, I want to get it done. Am I going to go and wire in the real Dolby A cartridges, or am I going to use Audio Things amazing Type A emulation? Plus, on this, you can actually control the frequency band volumes, which, as far as I know, you just can't do on that unless you rip it apart. So, which I'm not going to do. Anyways, what it's doing here. I like backing vocals to be kind of bright a lot of the time. That's the opposite of reality, where a backing vocal is back further away in the hall, it's softer, but I quite like them coming up on the right and left speakers like that. So I pushed up the treble on this. Dolby Type A was a form of pre-emphasis before you track something down to tape, so it's emphasizing certain frequencies in the treble band, so that when you then reduce them afterwards, you're pushing down the noise floor and bringing the treble band back to where it should be, if you get roughly what I mean. But yeah, if you just do what's called encoding it, i.e. add the treble and don't decode it, take away the treble and take away the noise with it, then you just get this really cool treble boost, which doesn't sound quite like an EQ. It's really good for backing vox. Very bright. I'm going to use another one of those Abbey Road Mastering Desks actually to flip this to side, I think, because I want even more side on it. Loads of side. Try again.
We were never gonna make it through the red light.
The hi-hat that's going that one is still a bit clacky. So I pipe that into the CalRec, one of the CalRec compressors, to just keep an eye on it, because even though it's nice that it's dynamic, it's really harsh. So I think it sounds a little better if I just sort of step on it. I think I might cross patch in some of my tape simulators as well. It's just kind of a standard setting that I like. I'll pull it in and out and you can hear what it's doing. Just smooths things nicely, keeps it all tight. I'm not actually going to send this to one of the CalRecs, I'm just using that set of outputs so that I can patch into another pair of those tape sims for the vocal bus.
You keep it pinned to the floor through the cold night. We were never gonna make it through the red light.
So again, it really just smooths the top off. Let's have a listen.
You keep it pinned to the floor through the whole night.
Just more rich.
We were never gonna make it.
I'm going to patch my last pair of tape sims actually into that drum bus, to be honest. So for the master bus, I've sort of put in the things that I would normally put in. Golfos here. This is actually a sort of standard start point for me. Almost, I haven't actually saved it as a preset, but I should. I don't have it doing anything that's too low where I don't need it. And I don't have it doing anything that's over sort of 11 or 12k because it just gets very, very bright and sometimes very, very harsh to me. The boost I like to add because I have a tendency to sort of put in quite a lot of mid and low mid, and I think it's nice to force a smile curve on yourself. Recover and tame I tend to have around 30% to start with, and I always pull the brighten down a lot because again it's something about the way that it treats stuff that it can make the brightness quite harsh. So it's not doing a vast amount. Again, all of this rough preset that I use is designed to keep the mix sounding roughly the same, but just do the cleaning up thing it does. Excuse me, which seems to be dynamics based. If you've ever put Golfos on a drum kit, not just dynamics based, it seems to affect dynamics. If you've ever put Golfos on a drum kit, you'll hear it sort of going and gating around the kicks and snares as it changes its bass and treble response. So it's obviously behaving alongside the dynamics. Beside the point, I like to use it so that it kind of keeps your mix relatively the same, but just does a bit of its nice sort of clearance. Lin EQ low band. It's just one of many ways you can filter. L316 is one of my favoured multi-band limiters. Again, I have my own set of settings that I usually use. Separation high, I like the warm analog release. Pretty much everything else I leave the same. I've dragged the release short because this is a tight and punchy track. I've just lowered the volume of the snare a bit, high passed it, and added a bit more in the low mid range because there's something a little bit lacking in that range in this track. So it just, I think it's nice to have something there. I think when I do the ooh whoa ho 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 falsetto, I'm going to bring the reverb track in. I'm not going to play any tricks to do that with plugins or anything like that. I'm just going to cut it. So, a fun way to bring reverbs out is to compress them, absolutely hammer them. These are all new to me. That's why I'm getting. So this is obviously based on a DBX of some sort. I can't remember which one off the top of my head, but it looks a lot like the ones I have in boxes over there that I haven't used in a long time. It looks like the posher version of that. I'm going to go double Arturia here and stick a mad plate on it. Probably a bit tighter on my cuts here because I'm actually in a sweet. I really do want it to ring. Cool. Just gonna try something really strange here, just for fun. I know chipmunk vocals, but let's see how it sounds. This might work. You were sorry, you were cool to me too. You keep it pinned to the floor through the whole night. We were never gonna make it to the night. Keep it pinned. The reason it's cool is you don't hear it like a stupid chipmunk when it's in the mix. You just hear this sort of elevation, a little bit of high pitch. But, you know, if you listen to it on its own, it's stupid, right? But works. Keep it pinned to the floor through the whole night. I've done a lot of work with the camera off, mainly because it's sort of boring for you to watch me just go over and over the same sections over and again, tweaking things. But what I'll do now is run through the main changes in the track. One of the biggest ones is the bass. I stopped bothering with that low air thing, like using sub addition to try and make the bass bigger. It just wasn't as smooth and big as a lot of the commercial tracks I was referencing. So I put on this new era 808 bass plugin. It's I think it's sample based. It's just a load of different 808 bassline samples and sequenced up a very sort of subby 808 bassline to go under the big sections of the song. So if we just play those together. You can see my usual trick there with Soothe pressing down on the sub bass in this 808 one just to sort of smooth it out a little bit more. And that sub is sidechained to the kick drum so that they make room for one another because they're sort of working in the same kind of frequency range. The lead synth is quite low passed. So I created an FX channel that synth sends to and put Ampire on it with some distortion, amp simulation, very extreme EQ. I mean, you can see there's almost nothing left frequency-wise, and a gate just because it's very hissy. And then I'll drag that slider up and you can hear what that's adding. So it's just giving some kind of excitement in the left and right, and it's making things sound a little bigger, or embiggening things when the chorus hits alongside that big 808 bass line. So we've got some extra sub, we've got some extra sort of treble at the top end. In terms of the drums, there are some changes here. I think the kick, I actually lowered the bass note even more. The EQ curve for the kick I changed quite a lot in order to make it work with smaller speakers. So if I just solo it out and I'll turn this EQ off and on. So turning it on just leans things out a little bit and you lose a lot of this low mid knock that you don't really need. Spiff, the transient control plugin from the same guys who make Soothe Erk Sound, is just clamping down on some of the hi-hats. It does make things a little duller, and it does make this sort of slightly fizzy top end sound. Some people don't like it. I quite like it because it allows you a lot of volume. You can sort of play things quietly. You can still hear them. If you turn it up really loud, they don't sort of hurt your ears. So it just gives you a bit more freedom, I think, with volume once you've finished. The overall drum bus has a few plugins on it. So here's a Soothe and a Spiff and Track Spacer. Track Spacer is by Waves Factory. I'm big into Waves Factory because cassette is amazing and Track Spacer is very, very clever. Here it's side chained onto the vocal, so the high frequencies in the vocal, I think I've got it set to like between 3 and 6 kilohertz, just a particular band. When it hears that frequency in the vocal, it pushes down on the drum bus on that frequency alone. It's an odd thing. It sounds kind of phasey. I don't know if they're going to do a linear phase option at some point so you can go like linear and make it not sound so phasey, or if that's just always how it's going to sound because of the way it works. So you'll hear the hi-hats going sort of phasing in that frequency range, but it works in the mix. You don't hear the phasing so much. The lead vocal has quite a strong EQ curve on it. That's because this range here is very heavily boosted on that. Microphone I used, I think it's because it's sort of live vocal mic, and they often have quite a strong presence boost just to sort of help them cut through if they're dynamic, especially. So I'm just taking that out. I can solo it, and you can hear what it's like when I turn that band off and on.
You keep it pinned to the floor through the whole night. We were never gonna make it to the red light.
So I don't know if you picked that up, but it's just it's a bit of a sort of hissy noise with it off that just isn't necessary. So it's gone. That brick walling, I don't think I really need to do that. I just did it. It hasn't caused a problem, so I've left it. I think it looks quite fun. It's just taken off the ultra highs, of which there are a couple of strange overtones going on. So I just thought, chop it. The vocal group has a much simpler curve on it. Again, sort of filtering off ultra highs, ultra lows, and just cutting a little bit of sibilance, a little bit low mid, just to make it sort of more mid-rangey and cut a little bit. And there is a soothe on it, but it isn't doing a huge amount.
You keep it pinned to the floor through the whole night. We were never gonna make it.
So like a lot of these changes, there's quite a lot of plugins knocking around, but a lot of them are doing a small amount at any one time. I'm not sending this to a separate mastering engineer, so as a result I can have great fun mastering it myself. Gullfoss is slightly different to how I'd originally had it there, more recover and less tame. I pulled it down quite a lot on the Brighton there and lowered its ability to work on the ultra high frequencies just to keep things a little bit smoother, because I'm not a huge fan of ultra highs, but I've used the boost control to sort of add a little bit of a smile curve coming into the other plugins. Ozone 8 Imager is just narrowing the bass below 150, and then the low mid and high mid automating throughout the track in width, and that just obviously it's getting wider during the chorus, and that just has the effect of sort of boosting the reverbs and so on in the chorus and giving things a bit more lush feel. The splitter over here is splitting. It's a great feature in Studio One Professional, and it's not really talked about a lot. It allows you to sidechain. So anything below 150 Hertz is going through the harmonics analog saturation processor, and anything above is going through the TubeCore Verimove Compressor Mastering Edition over there. That's very new to me. It's the first track that I've used it on, and it's slightly out of calibration at the moment. So it's sort of tilted a little bit to one side, and as a result there's a pan on there. I think I have to open it up and sort of tweak some pots on the inside in order to get it sort of working just right. But yeah, I'll solo off what the bass is doing, minus 7.5. Try and remember that. We can just have a listen to what the bass is doing here. So that harmonics analog saturation processor just tightens things together a little bit and smooths them out. You will be able to see what the tube compressor is doing once we do the full playback. I'll have the needles of that on screen so you'll get a rough idea. The fab filter here, ProQ, is doing, it looks like quite an extreme curve. It's not really that much, it's sort of a counter tilt. So while I was working, it was quite fun to work with this sort of vinyl-y soft sound. I had lots of massive boosted bass and like kind of a rolled off sort of old school sounding treble. But then when I referenced it against other sort of pop crossover tracks, it just sounded a bit too dull and rich, as it were. And so this curve is pretty much counteracting that feel. I can actually A/B between flat and that curve, so you can have a quick listen. So it sounds a lot richer with the curve off, but with it on, it's a lot more like sort of reference tracks that you would listen to in this kind of genre. So that's, one of those things when you're mastering something, it's not as much about your taste as it is about just making it work in the genre and on lots of different systems. The LinMB is the linear multiband compressor from Waves Linear Phase. It just softly pushes down on all the bands in a sort of undulating manner in order to keep things from getting too harsh if you're going to hit limiter afterwards. That's what I use it for anyway. Soothe is not doing a huge amount here.
Keep it into the floor through the whole night. We were never gonna make it through the night.
So it's just grabbing a couple of harmonics that are a bit wayward or sharp and pushing down on them. That's it, really. At this stage, it's more like, you know, going over something with multiple layers of sandpaper, getting finer and finer, just doing little changes here or there, than it is sort of doing huge sweeping attacks on a frequency band. Waves L316, as usual, I'm using that as the master limiter. It's just sort of my favoured one because I know it well. A short release, warm analog release character, and high separation between the frequency bands to keep things nice and bright and sharp. In terms of the amount of limiting I do, I quite like it when sort of heavy transients, kicks, snares and that push like 6 dB off or something like that, because you still maintain the sort of bounce of a track, but you just get a bit more loudness out of it and it sounds more exciting, I think, when it is limited.
We keep on, we don't stop. Shall we carry on pushing till we both drop? We came through all the tough times. Hold on through another year's rough ride. You keep it pinned to the floor through the cold night. We were never gonna make it through the red light. I lost my lover to the dead dark streets. She's not there even in my grasp. We drowned down deep in the good times past. I wanna be there, but I'm so far, like a dim light flicker over that star. All the time in between is the distance that we travel when we killed our dreams. Keep it pinned to the floor through the cold night. We were never gonna make it through the red light. One time breaking up and getting back together. 2 times telling you it's gonna be forever. 3 times I was cruising you. 4 times I'm helping you. It's sorry you were cruising me too. You keep it pinned to the floor through the whole night. We were never gonna make it through the red light. You keep it pinned to the floor through the cold night. We were never gonna make it through the red light.
So if you found any of that useful, please subscribe, drop me a like, and make sure to click the bell so you know when I upload new content. This was an enormous amount of work to produce, far more than I thought it was going to be, so any appreciation is much appreciated. If you want to suggest anything for me to do, or any techniques or particular pieces of hardware or software to cover, then please let me know in the comments. In the description box, you'll find all kinds of links to things that I've used throughout this and other things you might find useful. Also to my Twitter, my Facebook, Instagram, and a Discord. I've set up a Discord in case you just want to sort of chat gear with me, because that's always fun. Be sure to subscribe to Sound on Sound's YouTube and check out their Instagram too. I'm involved in quite a few of the videos over there, but even the ones I'm not involved in are good as well. It's always worth subscribing to Sound on Sound. They know what they're talking about. And be sure to check out the magazine in print and on the iPad edition as well. That's all for now. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you'll continue watching the films that I produce. Again, anything you want to see, let me know. Cheers.